So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday night's exam prep. New folks that come in, again, we do this every Wednesday night. It's circulatory, means that you can come and go as you wish. You can come in, stay for the entire session. You can drop off early if you want. You can choose not to come on Wednesday nights. It seems that the Basement King has chosen not to join us again. No, his actually his wife's birthday, so that is way more important. And because if you forget her birthday, you're going to have to deal with that for an entire year, and that's never good. So anyway, welcome everybody. Everybody that's here, Darren, everybody, Jenny, James, Mike, Jim, Ernesto, Will, thanks for joining. Thanks for coming again. For all those over there that are watching in the stream, remember, folks, here in the Fast Tracks, we can communicate and you can ask questions, but they cannot participate over in the live streams, but they can kind of get a sneak peek on what's going on and kind of get a little look at what the Fast Tracks is all about. And but they can't really participate. Oh, we got more coming in. Ricardo, thanks for joining. Let's see, Edgar's in the house, so thank you for joining. I believe Edgar's down in Alabama. Neat. I'm going to be doing a video. Just want to let y'all know I'll be doing a video here in the next day or so that actually introduces a neat feature with NFPA, which is basically an interactive map to let you know exactly which codes and which different standards are applicable to which state you're in. It's a pretty neat little map system that you click and do this. So that's a pretty neat. I'm going to be doing a video on that here shortly. Again, it's great for people that are practicing or getting ready for an exam and wanting to know exactly what their state is on and what other documents their state is adopted and enforcing. So it's a little interactive thing that NFPA put together. So that'll be a pretty neat. I'll do that one night and kind of do that. So again, welcome everybody. As always, I like to say if there is anything that you've encountered in your studies of the Fast Tracks as you're going through it, before we get started into looking at some exam questions and dissecting, and maybe we'll even do some of the competency review ones that I pick that are sometimes more difficult for some people. So we'll do all those as well. But if you have any, I'll just open it up, and any of you want to point us to whether it's the 2017 or the 2020 edition of the program, let me know, and I'm more than happy to go there. And we'll look at a question, or we'll look at where you might be needing a little more clarification on something. Anybody got anything?
Hey, Paul, one quick question.
Yes, sir.
I'm here on the computer right now. I'm working with my phone, but I'm the computer. I went into the members. I don't see the link for this meeting.
Yeah, it's in there. It's in the members, but it's underneath the one that talks about the one for grounding and bonding. It's the one at the bottom. It's underneath it, so you might have to scroll down, but it's in there. I was just in there. I was just in there a few minutes ago.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. It's the one that just sits down there. I just leave it there for everybody that comes to this meeting on Wednesday night. The links hasn't changed, so it's the same one. Just bookmark it or whatever you will use it each week for Wednesday nights. So that doesn't change.
And one question.
Yo's in the house. Thanks for coming. And Wilfredo's joining us, and LRG is coming in. Yep. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Now for the grounding and bonding, it was yesterday. That was free too, or?
Yeah. So that was last night. We did 3 hours last night. That was for the members. Ultimately, the whole thing will be up on the members area. Once it's completely done, that will be up there. But yeah, that was the live view or the live participation. So it was last night was the third session. And then we've got the fourth session that'll come. And then we've moved that to the first week in December. December. Wow, that'd be a long wait, wouldn't it? The first week in January. For that, because of the holidays. I didn't do very good timing on picking those dates back in October when I set that thing up. So but yeah, but that'll be posted up there as well when the next session will be. And that one's will be a good session because that one we're going to cover separately drive systems, grounding and bonding, and we're also going to jump straight into things like sizing, equipment grounding conductors. We already touched last night on supply side bonding jumpers and sizing, and we're going to be talking about all the different types of electrodes and the nuances between them. So we're going to that's the next 3-hour session, and that one, to cover everything that I want, it might end up being 4 hours, but because I've got a lot of stuff that I want to cover in that last session. So but anyway, that's for the members that are over in the monthly subscription deal.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're going to get in it. So other than that, do we have anybody that has any questions that they've encountered in their Fast Tracks program that I can go to and answer or explain it, or we can go over it and give you a little more clarity? Please let me know. That just tells me that it just must be just perfect and you have no questions on any of the questions in the program. Of course, we have the ones that are the practice exams and all. Again, I don't control those. They're from DeWalt that are purchased for the program. They're just good for you to practice with. But I want you to focus more on the competency reviews. So if you happen to be done the program, one of the things I recommend is when you get to the end of it, if you still got time, I recommend you at least go back and do Unit 8, Unit 11, and Unit 13 to the point where you just feel fluid with it. And that's because it really deals with the calculation aspects of it. So I want to make sure that you really feel comfortable with how we come up with the values in the competency review. And even if you look at the examples, you can bring your own flavor to it by changing some of the things around and changing the sizes of ranges or whatever it is, and just kind of keep testing yourself with that kind of thing. So, but I definitely encourage you to be doing those practice and final exams just to kind of hone your skills and that type of thing. All right, well, let's see here if I'm going to make sure I've got the screen that I want. And let's see if I can share this with you. Okay. All right, so we're looking at the 2020 edition. Of course, we need to go to the 2017 edition. You just let me know. We'll go to the 2017 edition. One of the things I will remind you, if you're into the course and you haven't really looked at any of the features, you do have access to the book over here, this little book icon. You can always click it at any time. Even when you're doing the competency reviews, you can still do that. The whole concept of the course also is to have you go in and out of the material into the code book. That's what we have the chevrons for. That's why you go in and out, in and out. Even though you might be covering it in the program, you're reading something and you're like, well, that's the same thing this section's, this chevron send me to, still do it, because the whole process is to try to get you to move in and out and get more comfortable with working with the code book. Also, it just makes it a little easier when you do an exam. It just reduces that tension that you might have with having to dig into the code book. So that's really the whole concept. Also, make sure you're messing around with these flashcards. And so you can make unlimited numbers of flashcards, but right now they are based on units. And I encourage you, if you want to make your own, make them in Unit 1 because it's easier. So you're in Unit 1, just go down here and it says create a card. You can create a flashcard on anything you want. So just as one day when you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, I've been studying really hard. What am I going to do? Okay, well, how about you do some flashcards on all the important tables that are, say, in 250. Maybe you're going to say, well, I'm going to do grounding electroconductors, 250.66 table. Maybe I'm going to do one for equipment grounding conductors and 250 to 122. Maybe you're going to do one for grounded conductor, supply side bonding jumper sizing, system bonding jumper sizing, main bonding jumper sizing, all of that. Well, that's going to use 250 102 C1. And so you make a table for that. The more you make, the more you can flip them, get used to it. It's just going to make you a little easier to start getting real fluid with these things. Another thing I recommend you to do in Unit 1, if you get the time as part of your study plan, is to go on and get yourself used to doing some flashcards based on the different articles. You take a great example is our last week, as we saw we were ending. I mean, we were having a little private session offline, and I have a brain fart when it comes to branch, circuit, and feeders outside. I've been doing this for 30 some years, but you can have that brain lock where you just totally block it out, and it's obvious. It happens in an exam too, and it happens with everybody. So when you're studying, you get study overload. And I'm engaged in this stuff almost 7 days a week, and fortunately. So with yourself, make sure that you do those different things and create those different flashcards. And they're real easy to create. Just click the flashcard here, put in the term here, and this will be what you would have on one side, and this is what you would have on the other side. And that way it creates the card for you. Okay, so they're on all of these. So again, you can go down to the loads in Unit 8, and you could just, and even if you're just doing them, to click them, to read them. Appliance, utilization equipment built in standard sizes and types. Okay. Calculated load for each laundry circuit in a dwelling unit 1500 VA. You can just get used to what that is. And then here's the other thing I tell you to do. Challenge yourself to find that. So where do you go in 210 to get values? Or do you go in 220 to get values when it comes to things? So challenge yourself, all right, to do that and stop. And so take your time with these flashcards and quantify them by sitting there going, okay, let me go find where this 1500 VA is for dealing with the laundry circuit. And you can do the same thing as we do when we dissect it. Treat it like a question. So people ask us, where do I get extra questions to be studying? Well, you can get endless questions by using even these flashcards, by taking these questions here and go finding out to quantify where this value comes from. Okay, non-coincidental loads. You can explain what they are, but then ask yourself, where is that in the National Electrical Code? Well, two or more loads that are unlikely to be used at the same time, non-coincidental. Okay, they're non-coincident loads means that when this load's running, this load's not running. Okay, but where is that in the code? Okay, then you go look and say, well, I'm going to look at 220.60. And if you're looking it up and just challenge yourself, when you think there's not enough to do, then you can use these in order to challenge yourself. Percentage of service rating allowed for sizing dwelling unit service conductors. What is the percentage? Okay, well, in your mind, you're thinking, okay, this must be that 83% rule. Well, the 83% rule, okay, where does that at? Where did it come from? All right, well, if you do it long enough and you start looking it up, you're saying, okay, well, this is in 310.12. But it used to be, if you're in the 2017 code, it was 310.15B7. So there is ways that you can use these flashcards, not just as flashcards, but go look it up to quantify the flashcard, that type of thing. So that's just a tip on how you can get more out of your study session by using flashcards. I taught people for years to go buy 3x5 cards and write on them. And I did this, trust me, back when I was doing it in testing, I had flashcards and I would write branch circuits on one side, Article 210 on the other side. Outside branch and feeders, 225, I'd write it on one side and write the other. Okay, 430 for motors. I did that with all of them so that I could just get used to seeing it at a glance. And trust me, it just makes your life so much easier, not just on an exam, but in the real world when you start encountering things. And I know you will, because I get students emails on a daily basis from people that are no longer in the program. They're out in the field and they ask questions, and they almost find their answers themselves as they're asking me questions, because I start saying, well, where would you go to find that? Where would you go? And they go, oh, I'd go here. Okay. Well, creating these cards, and again, you can make an unlimited number of them if you want on any topic. You can even do pictures, take screenshots of tables and put them in there as well, because it gives you the ability to actually add an image, click a link to it, wherever it would be, whether it's internal or on the internet or whatever you want it to be. You can put the link in here. All right, so that's just one feature to be aware of. So in case you want to use that, don't think you're out of resources, because you're not. Okay. I'll also remind you that anytime I do your competency reviews, you're going to go down here to the green progress, and you'll click it, and that's where you're going to go to see, and make sure you look for my comments. It's going to be one running comment, but my queue will tell you which questions I'm giving you the answer for. Those are the questions that you got wrong. If you did get less than a 60%, then I'm not going to give you the answers, because I think you need to read the material again. And so that's the whole purpose of that. Okay. Let's do some questions. You know what? Let's do some of the finals, because I don't know. Let's see. So we have a low percentage of people doing finals. So that's going to be good to mess with a little bit. And again, let's see if we can find any that are wrong. And the other thing to remember is, if we get them wrong, I want y'all to really try to get these answers. If we get them wrong, it's okay, because you can still learn in this stage, okay? It doesn't do any good if we put a bunch of questions up there and we just give you the answer right away. We want to work through it. So make sure, if you want to chime in, take your mic off, and feel free to chime in. And there is no wrong answer at this stage. It's work through the question, okay? As you can see there, this bank here has 75 questions in it, and it starts over again when you get to the end of it. So again, and it shuffles them up so you can take it again. And it doesn't matter if you take it multiple times, you're still going to look these things up in the code, right? So it's going to make it just a repetitive thing that you do, okay? But one of my golden rules for those that may be new, and I'm sorry I'm looking here and not at y'all, but y'all get the point. This is the stream. Just remember that even a bad question can still be a good question, because I do get a lot of joy out of students that find issues with questions, if it's truly an issue with the question. Unfortunately, I can't do anything to change these, but I can pass that on. And I think we've already captured all the ones that are an issue, but you might even get that issue on an exam. You're going to get into an exam, and trust me, I deal with a lot of students, thousands. And I've over, I think my wife counted since I started this way back in the 80s. I've taught over 45,000 students. And they go to exams, and they get questions on exams that they just shake their head. They're like, what the, is that on a test? And you're going to get it. And it's unfortunate, but it just is what it is. So the better you can prepare. But what I tell people is, don't worry at this stage about timing yourself. That's the last 2 weeks before you go into an exam. Then you start timing yourself with questions. You put it on a 2-minute timer, you click it on your phone, you hit the timer, and then you answer the question. But up to then, you're not worrying about time. And other people have their own study methods, and that's fine. Let them do it. But I have a successful method of teaching people how to study, been very successful. Any jackleg out there can say they teach people how to pass exams, but they don't have a plan. Okay, so the program is put together in a certain way. So make sure you dissect the question and take your time and really dissect it. Okay, and if it's wrong, use the answers to try to find out why you got it wrong. That type of thing, right? Sorry for my animals here tonight. I give them one night, Thursday night, where they have to be quiet. Any other night, because of Electrician Live or Electrify, any other night, I really can't put restrictions on them, right? So anyway. All right, so in general, equipment grounding conductors of the wire type are to be sized accordingly based on blank, okay? So this is the question here. So we might know the answer right off the bat, right? We might be like, dude, I know the answer. I get it. But what we want to do is we want to dissect it down, get code references, and really understand what's being asked here. Okay, so with that said, let me see if I can get my, there we go. Okay, so in general, equipment grounding conductors of the wire type, okay, are to be sized accordingly based on blank. Number A, the rating of the overcurrent protector device of the circuit. B, the allowable ampacity of the ungrounded conductors after derating. C, full load current of the circuit load. And D, the size of the ungrounded conductors of the circuit. So what do you think? And with that, tell me where in the code you would go to size equipment, ground, and conductors. Anybody, go ahead.
I go with A, or that first option, the rating of the overcurrent protection device of the circuit. And to size it, you'd use table 250.122.
Absolutely. Ding, 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 ding. So this is the only choice that's available here. Obviously, equipment, ground, and conductors are going to be based on the size of the overcurrent protected device. So that is 250.122 and the associated table accordingly. So we'll go and answer that. And there you go. Okay, so you've got the general rule, which is 250.122A, which is ultimately sends you to table 250.122. Okay, so there you go. And also, most people will notice, even the ones that are online, you'll notice that we give the 17 and the 2020. So if you're in the 2020 fast tracks, it does give reference here anyway to the 17. And then the 2017 will give reference to 2017 or in 2014, that type of thing. So you did get multiple references here in the page numbers where it should be in the code, but good job. All right. So the next question is, for maintenance, the disconnecting means for associated swimming pool blank shall be readily accessible and within sight from the equipment to be disconnected. So the answer is, for maintenance, the disconnection means for associated swimming pool water pump motors, or is it luminaires? Is it A, which would be luminaires only? Is it B, neither water pump motors or luminaires? Or C, water pump motors only? Or D, both water pump motors and luminaires? Okay. So we could probably take a stab guess at this, but we're not going to do it. So what we're going to do is try to dissect out of here where we need to be. So first things first, what article deals with swimming pools?
680.
Absolutely. All right. So 680 deals with swimming pools. Now a question that's being asked is about the disconnecting means, right? So one thing that we will learn is that the luminaire requirements and the motor requirements in 680 are pretty darn close together when it comes to the code sections, okay? And so a couple things that we can do with this if we were dissecting it. Now, you could go to 680 and just run right on through it. However, to get us in the right position where we want to be, we could go to the index. If you didn't know, you could go, obviously, you could go to 680 and start hitting the bold points and everything like that. But let's go on and just say we're going to go to swimming pools, fountains, and similar locations. So it's 680. And then we have a bunch of information here that's in here. And we see one thing you'll notice if you're kind of going down through there, as you're going down with me, is you'll notice that when you get to luminaires, and the question does talk about luminaires, you'll notice that that is 680.22, or it's all right around there. But then you'll notice that motors, and it's asking about water pump motor, which is the circulating pump motor. You'll notice that motors is right there as well. That's in section 21. And we start looking at the rest of the stuff, and you're looking down, just as you were going through everything, you'll notice that as you get further down, you'll also notice as you keep going, you'll see luminaires again. And that's still in 22, still in 680.22. And in motors is still in 680.21. The only difference in these is they are kind of offset from what's called low voltage contacts. So that's typically probably not, they're all right in the same area anyway. So if I was looking for this in the code and I was preparing for, and I was taking the exam right now and I was looking at this, then I would feel comfortable in going to .22 or .23 area and start looking. for this. Now, as I tell you all the time, if you already know the answer, you've already done this, and you're going through the program, and you're like in that first wave on your exam, and you just know the answer, and your gut, you feel you know it, then mark it and move on. But if there's any hesitation to you, spend the time that you need to spend on it to try to dissect it out. And of course, when we're studying this way, I want you to most certainly take your time on it and look at all the possible ways. And the reason I say that is because you learn what you'll find. For example, if I were to just say, okay, I did the swimming pool thing. What happens if I were to look up under disconnecting means? Would it say anything about swimming pools in disconnecting means? Just for the learning process. So before we even just jump off to 680.22 or 21, just look under disconnecting means and see what you see. See if there is anything. It may or may not be there. All right. So I'm going to look under it. You should be doing it too. So under disconnecting means, I will look down and let's see if we see anything that has to do with. Now I see luminaires, but that's that's in 410. I know that all this is having to do with swimming pool applications. So I'm looking down and see what else I've got. And I don't believe I see anything that would have put me there. I might be missing it. That would have put me in 680 when it comes to under disconnects. I don't believe I see anything. Okay, so this is what we hear. People hear me on videos all the time talking about dissecting. This is what I'm talking about. We're dissecting the question. If people come into that stream and they don't understand what we're doing, they'll go, how do you go pass a test if it's taking you all this long to dissect it? You might know the answer, but this is this process. If you're one of those who don't understand and you're watching on the stream, my recommendation is go watch a rerun of Friends or something, and this is not for you. Okay, go on and have a nice night. All right. So we're doing it for a reason. Okay, and it's part of our process, and that's why we're letting you peek into how we do this. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, you know what? We're going to go to 680, and we're going to be going to 22 and 21. That's where everything was being referenced for luminaires as well for the pumps. So let's go to 680.
Paul,
21. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
in 680, 680.13 is
Yes.
maintenance disconnecting means.
Mm-hmm.
So in that, it's saying for all ungrounded conductors shall be provided for utilization equipment other than lighting.
Okay. Okay. So that might help us in the question. Because that says for maintenance, the disconnecting means and associated. Now, interesting, go back real quick in the index and see what it said, if it had any reference to maintenance in the swimming pool aspect. Now, I see luminaires, I see motors. Let's see here. Did it have a reference to anything to do with maintenance in here? Just for cross references purposes. I don't see anything for that. But while we're also looking at that, if that did that stick out to you, something about maintenance? So let's see. Under M's, there's anything that would be under that. And I don't see anything really under that. So for what I want to do is, so for this case, it's talking about for maintenance, the disconnect means for associated swimming pools blank shall be readily accessible within sight of the equipment to be disconnected. And so the question is, does this apply only to water pump motors or only to luminaires, or only water pump motors or only luminaires, or neither, or either one of them? So you went to the maintenance disconnect means because it says maintenance in it, and it's a disconnects means, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's read it real quick again together. So we're at 680.13. One or more means for simultaneous disconnecting of ungrounded conductors shall be provided for all utilization equipment other than lighting. Okay, so this one right here, but let's make sure we have this other language in here that we need. It says each means shall be readily accessible and within sight of the equipment. That is all in the question. Okay, so I would say without the other stuff here, it's probably irrelevant. I would say that this right here, the way I see, looks like it only applies to, before we even assume that though, we're going to look and detail it more. So I would say it only applies to I or one only, or I only. I guess that's an I, Roman numeral I. So on the surface, it looks like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so while we're here anyway, even though this one was for maintenance, while we're doing this, I want to go up and still want to go look at dot 22 and dot 21, just for kicks and giggles to make sure we're ruling that out. And I'm going to go to the lighting, and the lighting, none of it in here says anything about dealing with maintenance for the lighting, which doesn't even wouldn't even make sense when it comes to the lighting aspect of it for maintenance. So I'm going to say that 680.13 would be your reference. And would y'all all agree that that would be the only one that would fit for this? Would be water pump motors, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So before we even just pull up the answer to that, I want to see, one of our goals is to see where in here that we might get a reference to a maintenance disconnect in the index. Remember, one of our goals is to see if there's a possibility for cross-reference anywhere in this index. So what was something I might look under? Let's see. So if it's water pump motors, maybe I look under motors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to see if there's anything in motors. While we're doing it, the part of this exercise is to cross-reference and find out all possible locations. So I'm looking under motors, and let's see here, seeing if I see anything for, well, I see some disconnecting means, but that's not what we're dealing with. I see a maintenance 430.14a, but that's not really what we're dealing with the pools. Okay. So I do see swimming pools, fountains, and similars, but that's just in general. So that is motors. So that is 21. So that does have to do with motors, but that doesn't really have anything to do with our maintenance disconnect.
Yeah. In index underneath D,
Under D?
disconnect. Yeah, disconnecting means
Okay.
pools, spas, and hot tubs does reference 680.13.
Excellent. So go to disconnecting means. Okay. And disconnecting means you get all the way down to pools, spas, and hot tubs. So there's 680.13. So cross-reference there for pools, spas, and hot tubs and whatnot would have gotten you to the disconnecting means. Not necessarily doesn't say maintenance disconnect, right? But
Right.
it is under disconnecting means. So that's one way to find it there. So, but that's the only place that got us to 13, right?
Yeah, so far.
So yeah, swimming pools didn't do it for us.
No.
Would have been nice under swimming pools to have, disconnect, right? Or like a maintenance or something like that. If whoever was right. Now I guarantee you the Tom Henry books will have it, their key phrase or their keyword thing. I'm sure it will. But again, depending on whether or not they allow you to use that. But what is one of the things I say to do? Let's go on and look at the answer here. All right, so 680.13. But while you have the moment, while you're in the index, go to swimming pools real quick, glance at every one of those code references, see if any of them have the .13 after it. So you can cross-reference it if there is anything in here. I see heaters under .10. And I'll tell you why we're doing this, and I'll prove it in a point in a minute. So keep on going and look. I'm looking down. Everybody should be looking down their index.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I'm only seeing pool covers and pools
Yes.
referencing, 680.2 for definitions.
So the point being that this is very much germane to swimming pools, but yet it was not under the index for swimming pools at all, right? So the whole purpose now, when you start thinking about why we do this, when you're doing an exam and you're thinking about swimming pools, that none of this under here, none of that will be under any part of this. In fact, they don't even say under swimming pools, I don't even see the reference to disconnecting means. Do you?
No.
So again, it's trying to learn what's in the index and what's not in the index and where you don't have to waste your time. So in this case, it looks like the root of this is disconnecting means, and its key, a trigger would be maintenance disconnecting means, right? Now, part of me would have told me if I was doing this on a first wave on an exam, the reason I would not have at least chosen anything with 2 in it, because generally we don't have a disconnecting means requirement for the luminaires. It'll have GFCI protection. It could be used as a disconnect, but it's not for maintenance purposes, right? So the disconnect for maintenance purposes are pretty specific to pumps. So if I was cycling this on an exam, I would probably look at it and go, well, the only real answer here could be, I know that there's a disconnect requirement for the pumps, but I know that there's no disconnect requirement for the luminaires when it comes to maintenance reasons. And that might be a reason I answer this in the first wave on the exam or something like that. So just ways to dissect it. We won't spend as much time as we did on that one, but again, knowing what is and what is not in the index is real important, because it can save you a lot of time hunting for it, and whether or not something's there or not. All right, next question.
Just kind of briefly, if I had to go through that real quick too, you
Yeah.
don't really hear of disconnecting means for lights anyways, so I'd
Yeah.
just stick
Yeah,
with
that's-
motors disconnect, like you said.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If I was doing this on a first wave of exam, now I wanted us to go through and dissect it so we can get that out of the way, because I know that there are people watching over the stream that I want to make sure they understand that our process is to dissect a question.
Without a doubt.
But at the end of the day, you're exactly right, Michael. If I'm looking at that, I'm going to be ruling out things that are clearly not plausible. We know that the motors require disconnect, okay? But what we know is that the luminaires, yeah, it might have a switch, but that's for control purposes. We have a breaker, we can turn it off, but those don't have anything to do with the maintenance aspect of it. So yeah, so you could have whipped through that and probably answered that by just process of elimination. But I wanted us to dissect it and look at swimming pools and realize that you would think that everything about the dude run into a swimming pool question would be under swimming pools in the index, and it's obviously not. For this one, it's not that type of thing. Which is another point why it's so important through the fast tracks, is that you start learning how you can do that process of elimination, because you learn it, and you won't have to spend that much time dissecting in an exam. We hope not, anyway. I mean, you're not going to have enough time to dissect in an exam, but learning what is and isn't in the index can be beneficial, save you a little time. I can tell you right now, I'm not going to go to swimming pools to look anything to do with disconnects. We learned that right now. I'm not going to swimming pools in the index for anything to do with a disconnect. I'm going to go to disconnects for that and look under that part of it, or the first general provision of swimming pools, which is where we saw the maintenance one in section 13. All right. When nails are used to fasten metal boxes to wooden studs, the nails that pass through the interior of a box, I'm sure y'all have seen those old metal boxes with the holes, and the nails actually go through the box. So, I mean, that's dating ourselves a little bit, and I guess they're still out there. But so when nails are used to fasten metal boxes to wood studs and the nails pass through the interior of the box, the nails shall be within blank inches of the back of the box. 3/8 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, 1/4 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch. Okay. So the nails, they have to be, you know, a certain distance, within a certain distance of the back of that box. Okay. So where will we find this? All right. Are we going to dissect this one? Well, I think we can establish that this is probably going to be, if we had to do it at a 30,000 foot view to get us somewhere, and you were on an exam, where do you think, Michael, we are going to ultimately end up being? What article do you think we're going to end up being, because it's talking about boxes and different things?
314.
Yeah. So ultimately, we're probably going to end up in 314. All right. But what we do notice that this has to do with supporting of the box, right? This is securing of the box. Yeah, it's asking us about the nails and its proximity through the box. But it is all about the supporting method for the box. It is about a box. So if we didn't know the answer, and we could throw an answer out there, we're still going to have to go look anyway. But let's go to the index real quick and dissect it down and say, well, what's the key thing we're looking for here? Let's look under boxes. And again, if you're on an exam and you already know the answer to this, you've read it in your material and you know the answer, you mark it, you go on. It's not really what we do when we're examining it or dissecting it, but you do that, you move on, answer the question, get it, and go on. All right, so one thing we do know that this is what? So we know that this is a metal box, right? So if I look under boxes, and I'm going down and I'm looking at it and I'm looking at it and I'm looking at it and I'm going down, I see metal, I see the construction, I see the grounding and bonding, I see the installation, I see wireways and pull boxes. Has nothing to do with this question. So I'm feeling comfortable that's in 314. Now, if I was taking an exam at this point, I would probably write on my little scratch paper, I'd write 314, and then underneath it is where you write your sections. So you write 314, and then underneath it, you write your different sections that you want to look at so that you don't have to come back here. So if I was looking at it, I would see, okay, well, I'd write dot 40 down, and I'd see where there's a dot 4, but that's grounding and bonding, so it's probably not in my question. And then I'll see installation. I see, that looks like, what is that, part 2? And then above that in construction, you saw that there was also part 3 of 314. Okay. All right. See if we've got anything else. And as we keep on moving through it, see if there's anything else that we would need. All right, here's one thing we noticed, that there's also, what did we say? Securing and supporting, right? So
Yeah.
under boxes for securing and supporting, we do see a 314.23, right? So we're confident it's 314, but we're looking and we're talking about securing and supporting of a box. So I'm probably gonna write .23 down, right? And then I know that I don't need to worry about 392. That's not something that we're going to worry about. In 300.11, not really something that's going to be directly with the box and how it's being supported and secured. So that probably not going to help me there. And then that goes through and it looks like that's it for everything. Okay, so what I'm going to do is think we probably have enough. So I'm going to go to 314 in my code book.
I think it is 314.23.
Okay.
B1.
All right. Man has spoken. So let's see here. All right. So let's just follow our exercise, though. I believe Edgar's on there. But let's look at, so I'm at 314. And it said there's a part 2 and a part 3. So let's see. Where does part 2 start? Okay. Part 2 starts at 314.15, right? And if I was doing bold scanning, I would hit these bold scans. And what I'm looking for is something to do with the term, nails and passing through, interior of a box, things like that, nails. I don't see anything having to do with supporting for this. Okay, so I'm just bold scanning. Then let's see here. And just for craps and giggles, we're still in 2. Let's look over at part 3. And part 3 is dealing with the construction specifications of the box. So we know that has to do with the box itself. So we know that we're going to be in part 2. All right, the one thing we'll notice is the other reference that we had here, well, .40, that wasn't going to help us because that puts us over in part 3. We just determined that was off the table. So the only one left was the .23 reference. So when we go to the .23 reference, which was firmly in part 2, we're looking at, it is supports, and we go down and you'll see nails stick out at you right away. And that is 314.23b1, as Edgar said. And if you look down into it, and another thing that should draw your mind is on an exam, you have the options here. Now this, in a multiple choice in an exam, we're going to use these answers to our benefit. So when we're here, we already know that there's a value in here. And I see that 1/4 of an inch sticking out, like just like right in my face. And that is one of our options here. So we're going to look at it and see it's, and all of a sudden I glance at it and I see the word pass through the interior. All that is written in our question. So I'm going to look at it and say, okay, how does this read? It says nails or screws were used as a fastening means shall secure the box by using brackets on the outside of the enclosure or by using mounting holes on the back or on one or more sides of the enclosure, or they shall pass through the interior within 1/4 of an inch of the back or ends of the enclosure. Okay, so that's comfortable about that question. So dissecting it again, we knew it was 314, right? So that would help us. Now, as you get more into this, you would realize that part 3 of most all articles has to do with construction. So we could have eliminated part 3 right off the bat because that's about the construction. That's going to tell me the thickness of the walls of the box and all this stuff. Well, that's not our question. So we could have got rid of that right away, and that narrows it down. At 314, we could have looked at it and we could have said, well, we know we're going to be in part 2 because part 1 is general. Part 2 is dealing with things like the supporting and whatnot. But then, of course, we quantified that under supports. That's where 23 was, section 23. So that's why we would have gone to that area. Okay. So you could have bold scanned that by going to part 2 and just looked at the bolds, and then you would have seen the nails and you would have seen the other references in there. And so that would have been a way to get you there too. So different ways to get you there. There you go. And that did not change. Edgar's in the 2017, I believe. And that did not change for the 2 cycles. All right. Next, where non-metallic sheath cable, NMB, is used with a single gang non-metallic box, no larger than a 2 1/4 by 4 inches. So this is a simple Carline blue nail up, just a cheap 22 cubic inch, 18 cubic inch, whatever, something like that. So where non-metallic sheath cable is used with a single gang non-metallic box, no larger than 2 1/4 by 4 inches, the cable is not required to be secured to the box if the cable is fastened within at least blank of the box. So when we say fastened, when we say the cable is going to be secured to the framing member within how many inches of the box? Okay, where would we go for that? Now, your mind sometimes wants to think, well, we're going to go to 334 because this is non-metallic sheath cable, right? So that's where you generally your mind would go. Well, let's see, where do you think you're going to go on this one?
314.
314, okay. And so where would you go? Where are you going to go in 314? All right, let's look at a couple other ways here. That's why because when we have that silence. So what we do is, real quick, let's look at what it says in 334 for non-metallic sheath cable first. Let's just go there and look, because that might be what you do on an exam. You're thinking, ooh, that's non-metallic sheath cable. Then we'll look at the index and show you how you would break that down. But a lot of you will go right to 334 right away. So let's go to it. And obviously we're talking about what? We're talking about the question here, dissected down. This part is really relevant when you know why it's relevant. But up to this point, the key thing that's being asked is cable and securement of the cable. That's what's really being asked here. So if you go look at it, securing and supporting with non-metallic sheath cable is in section 30, right? So section 30 says non-metallic sheath cable shall be supported and secured by staples, cable ties listed and identified for securement and support. And I'm not really sure any cable ties that wouldn't be. I guess bread ties wouldn't be, but I mean, cable ties, obviously they're going to be listed for that, hopefully. Or straps, hangers, or similar fittings designed and installed so as not to damage the cable. The intervals not exceeding 4.5 feet, so 4.5 between secure points on a non-metallic sheath cable, and within 12 inches of every cable entry into enclosures such as outlet boxes, junction boxes, cabinets, and fittings. Okay, so when you look at that, you're thinking, all right, well, 12 inches is here, but it never made any statement about having to connect the cable to the box, connected to the box, right? So this is very specific to that 2.25 by 4 inch box. All right, so we know it's going to be under boxes. So let's real quick look under boxes again in the back. And again, you don't need it, you don't have to, but in our class we do, because we want to see what references are in the index. So I look at boxes and I want to see if there's anything in here. So of this, I'm looking at maybe non-metallic, something to do with, this is a non-metallic sheath cable. So maybe it's non-metallic boxes, something along those lines. So let's see what we've got here. As I'm looking down, and this is a non-metallic box. So at least when I know in boxes, you see there is a non-metallic here. It gives us 314.3, 314.17, 314.43, and 334.40. Well, we don't need to go to 334. We've already ruled that one out. So if I was writing this down, I would write 314, and underneath it, I would write .3, .17, and .43. Just writing them down, always starting with the lowest number and moving our way up. All right, and then I'm looking to see if there's anything else for this. Okay, I don't see anything else. All right, so the next thing that I would look at, just for learning sakes, is I would look and see if there's anything under non-metallic sheath cable. And so do that real quick. Let's look under and see if there's anything under the wiring method non-metallic sheath cable in the index. All right, so I see we have non-metallic sheath cable goes at the bottom and then it kind of rolls over to the top. And we got boxes and fittings. That's 334.40. We were just there. There's nothing there that's beneficial to us. Which ones are in 314? Okay, well, we see through and parallel to framing members 300.4. And then of course we see the reference to 334.17. But other than that, nothing extraordinary that would get us anywhere. And we know this is a box issue. 334 didn't help us any, right? So what else would we look at here? Let's see here. How about openings? So this talks about it, you know, it's not secured to the box. So the cable's just going through an opening. This is those 2.25 by 4 inch boxes where you just knock the hole in the back. There's no clamp built on it, just knocks the hole. So it's the openings in equipment. Let's see if there's anything to do with openings. Might not be. Well, opening equipment to be closed. Now you're not going to close those, so that doesn't give you anything. Okay, well, I'm going to go with the numbers that I have. I'm going to go with 3, 17, and 43, and we're going to be specifically looking for these references. Obviously, we're going to look for answers, these 12, 18, 10, and 6. We're going to be looking at these dimensions, 2.25 by 4, and it's all about cable that is not required to be secured to the box, so it would not be secured to the box. So those are the things that are bouncing around in your head when you're going to start doing this bold scanning. And we're going to go to .3 first and 314. You might have found it already. Sure you have. And again, if you already know it, and I teach this one a lot because this is one that I called out in a electrical blunders video that I did a lot around a house in a video. But anyway, if you go to 314.3, you'll notice right away that talks about the non-metallic boxes. And a quick scanning of it, you'll notice that none of these references are in that. So you move past it just that quick. The next one, you go to 17, 314.17, and you'll notice when you get to that is that it says conductors entering box, conduit body, or fitting. And you'll notice that you see B is box and conduit bodies. Now conductors passing through. And then you got B2. It says conductors entering through a cable clamp. And then one thing I notice is that as I'm looking over this, I'll actually notice an exception. An exception is talking about where non-metallic sheet cable is used with a single gang non-metallic box not larger than, and it gives these values, 2 1/4 by 4. Again, you might already know this, but here it says mounted in walls or ceilings and where the cable is fastened within 8 inches of the box measuring along its sheath and where the sheath extends through the cable knockout, not less than 1/4 inch, securing the cable to the box shall not be required. Okay, so in this case, then the answer to me is going to be 314.17B2, and it's in the exception, and it is within 8 inches. Okay, so we used 317, and we did not need to use 43 just for craps and giggles. What is 43? So we can learn from it. All right, that's just another reference for non-metallic boxes. Okay, so those were our non-metallic box references. This question was very much about a non-metallic box. It just happened to be associated with non-metallic sheet cable for it. Okay, so that should be our answer is 8 inches.
And just to clarify for the rest of the class again, these boxes we're talking about are those white, pretty much are mostly the white boxes. It's kind of like a thinner plastic you knock out. They don't have a tab to hold it.
Yeah, the ones I see, Michael, the ones that I've dealt with, and I call me cheap, if you will, was the Carlons, and they were blue.
I see.
And they got this little square tab, and we just would take this. We would just take I've seen the white ones. We would just take the. And you know what? It's also those ones that you're probably talking at too. They're more like, I've seen the ones that are more like a fiber box.
Yeah.
Those the same way. You knock out the hole, and once it's knocked out, it's gone. It's knocked out. So you wouldn't be securing this cable because the general rule, right, is that all cable assemblies have to be secured to a box. Well, that's when this will allow you to not have to do that. But in 334.30, that means that when I was clamped to a box, then I could go up to 12 inches before I put my first securement for that cable. Well, when that's not the case and that cable is not connected to a box, then I have to do it within 8 inches. Now I can do it at 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever, but it has to be within 8 inches. So that's under the exception, but you're right. It's those, I used to use, like I said, I used a lot of the Carlons and, the cheapies, the 22 cubic inch Carlons. And then when I'm feeling real tight wad, the 18 cubic inch ones, but then you got to be worried about box fill. But those are the ones where you just literally knock it. Now, that is not the case for folks out there that want to know 2 gang boxes, 3 gang boxes, 4 gang boxes, or even the single gang boxes that have the little V in them, whereas you have to push the cable in it, and it's a pain in the butt to get that cable in there. I know y'all have done it, and you can't get it back out, right? Because it's kind of, it springs apart. That is considered a connection clamp. So then you could go up to 12 inches. We're talking about, like Michael said, we're talking about those boxes where you literally knock out the KO and it just goes right in the opening of the box, that type of thing.
So you're trying to say that for the blue boxes, we got to put the staples every 8 inches?
No, not every 8 inches. Within 8 inches of it entering the box. You get me?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Now, if you're using one of those nail-up boxes that actually has a built-in clamp that actually holds the cable, then you could go up to 12 inches and follow just the rules in 334.30 and follow those rules within 12 inches, and then you can go up to 4 feet and whatnot, that type of thing. But here, if that box has an opening on it like that, it meets this dimensions, again, 2 1/4 by 4, just a simple nail up, and you just simply knock a hole out of the KO, then you have to make sure that you put a staple within 8 inches of the box. Okay?
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yep, and I think I did a video on that where I just ripped a guy apart for about 10 boxes. He was like, dude. He wasn't even securing the cable. It was just like anywhere. But I would have thought the inspector would have rejected it, but yeah, I guess it passed inspection. I guess it depends on where you're at. All right, next one. The ampacity of type NM cable shall be in accordance with blank conductor temperature ratings, and blank temperature ratings shall be permitted to be used for ampacity derating purposes. Now, I could have probably given you this question, and I probably could have called this NM-B. And if anybody's been listening to me for years, they would have probably got this question just immediately. But what I want you to do is tell me where you get this information, and whether it's A, B, C, or D, and where will we go look up to find this information. And we need to know this for many reasons. One, if we're going to put cables through top plate that has thermal insulation in it, or we're going to be bundling or whatever, we've got to know these values in order to come up with a proper ampacity for this conductors. So what do you think? Where do we got to go? Yeah, you could go to the index, but we know, I can tell you right now, this is an example where this is something that should draw you straight to the article for non-metallic sheath cable.
Going straight to 334.
Okay, go to 334. And 334 is not a big one. So this is an example where bold scanning works great. We're talking about ampacity. We're talking about temperature ratings and all that type of stuff. So you could bold scan it pretty quickly. And I think literally it's what? You know, the code, as thick as the code is, and one of the most popular wiring methods out there are non-metallic sheath cable. Yet non-metallic sheath cable really only takes up, what is that?
You're gonna be B.
It's about what? Is a page and a half? That's about it.
Yeah.
That's about it. Okay. All right. So we're looking for the question. The key part of this question is this, right? Ampacity. That's what we're looking for. Temperatures are going to give us a key to what we're doing with ampacity. So if we hit the bold scanning on these really quickly on an exam, if you didn't know.
330.480.
Okay. So say that again.
334.80.
All right. And that says ampacity, right?
Yeah.
All right. So it says the type of the ampacity of types NM and NMC. And for those that want to know, NM is your non-metallic, 6B NM-B. It actually can be NMPCS, which is the one that has the control conductors in it as well now, just like the MC LED products and that's all an NM product. The NMC is pretty much like UF, except for it is an NM, but it is designed for in corrosive environments or environments where you would have corrosive element. Okay. But at the end of the day, most people don't make that. Most of the manufacturers don't make NMC. They just tell you to use UF and be done with it. Right. And I know I work for a leading manufacturer, and I know my counterparts that work for, Southwire. We're Encore. None of us make an NMC. It's just pointless to make it. We'll make NM, and then we'll tell you if you want anything else for those applications, use a UF-B. All right, anyway, so here's what it says. It says the ampacity shall not exceed that of the 60 degrees C rated conductor. And it says the 90 rating shall be permitted to be used for ampacity adjustment and correction calculations. And that's basically what it's talking about with D rating. Even though we don't use the word D rating really in here, that's what it's talking about for adjustment and correction purposes. So NMB, if you get a question on NMB, you'll know that the dash B tells you automatically by seeing that B that insulation is rated for 90. Now we know we're limited to 60, but it is rated for 90 because we get to do adjustment and corrections from the 90. As long as our resulting ampacity does not result in the use of it beyond what it's rated at the 60 degree level. Okay, all we're doing is making sure it's still got enough ampacity to do what we need to do. But we cannot load it more than what the 60 degree is. And in fact, even after adjustment and correction, we might even get less than the value in the 60. Then we might have to jump in conductor size, right? That wouldn't work for us. But the answer to this question, it is 60 and 90. Absolutely, right there. Oop, I thought I did answer the question. Oh, there we go. And there you go, 334.80. Good job.
That's
All
like
right.
your TikTok NMA.
Oh, yeah, don't get me started. Don't get me on that one. Somebody got upset that I was teasing Dustin, and I was like, you know, I helped Dustin out a lot. He would appreciate it, that kind of video. But I certainly didn't think that I came across as picking on anybody. I just was like,
No.
I was just like, they don't make an A, so don't go looking for an A. That's all I'm saying. He's a big boy. He knows that I do what I do for the why I do what I do. I don't mean anything by it, that type of thing. Trust me. If I wanted to be a prick about it, I don't have any bones about making it aware that I don't. People say, why would you do that? He's got a lot of followers. You'll lose members. People don't realize they don't know me. They know I don't care. I mean, why would I pull all my stuff off of YouTube if I cared? I really don't. All right. I just want people to learn the code. That's it. That's all I care about. All right, let's do the next one. But I appreciate the fact that you actually saw that TikTok. All right. So I don't do much on TikTok. I don't even understand that platform. I see a bunch of women show up in my feed bouncing around, but I don't even know if my stuff shows up in people's feeds because that's all I see on that thing is weird.
No, I was on Instagram last night, and all of a sudden I just see you TikTok, next, 2 pictures, you TikTok. I was just like, oh, I'm like, this is great. I was just laughing, watching.
Paul found TikTok. All right. There you go. All right. So the next one is the service equipment provided for a mobile home shall not, okay, we got a shall not rule here, shall not be mounted on the mobile home, but shall be located in sight from and not more than blank from the exterior wall of the mobile home it serves. Okay, I think I've done some training on this. We did something not too long ago, and I think I actually even did a webinar on this type of thing, or it might have been an Electrify episode with Jay where I talked about mobile homes and manufactured homes and all this. And this was our topic, one of the topics here. Okay. So anyway, without it giving it away, so obviously what we're talking about here is a mobile home, right? So mobile homes, and we're talking about the service equipment for this mobile home. And we're very much talking about the location for it. Now there's other triggers in here like located in sight, and we do have some distance references here. But if I was going to go to an article and, first thing I would do is if I wanted to narrow it down and I really wasn't practicing up on learning the different articles, one of the things that I might do is I might go to the index and I might go to mobile home. All right. And then maybe it can even narrow me down even quicker under mobile home for something to do with service equipment. Okay. Because those are the triggers. So I'm going to go look and follow our normal lesson plan that we usually do. And I'm going to go look and see if there's anything under mobile home. And there is. It is actually quite more than you would think under mobile homes. So obviously this tells you right off the bat, this is Article 550. Okay. And let's see here. If we kind of go down it, are we going to see something to do with services?
Yeah, service equipment.
Okay.
550.32.
So I'm going to write 550, and underneath it, I'm going to do like I always do. I do a .32. And for those that ever do, you get a limited amount of scratch paper when you're doing an exam, but I just wanted to show what I do. I actually will write the article down like that there. And then I actually put my list of sections underneath it so that if I have a different one that I want to go to, a different article for some reason, I write that to the side. And then underneath it, I put the different sections. That way I don't have to come back in here, and allows me to go right to it. All right, so that is service equipment. So 550.32 sounds very like that's going to be our deal. Okay. All right. So we could stop at that point. You can say, boom, I'm going to go and do that. But y'all know how I am. And that's what we would do in an exam. But y'all know how I am. So I want to look real quick under service equipment. And if it says anything about mobile homes under the service equipment in the back index. Again, why do we do it? Michael, why do we keep doing this in the index even though we know we could have already probably gone and answered the questions? Why do we do this again? He says, I don't know why you do this, Paul. It's not what I would do. No, because we're trying to learn what is and what isn't covered in the index. So
yeah, so they listed underneath service equipment, mobile homes.
All
and
right.
it's also referencing 550.32.
Okay, so at that point, we've done our due diligence. We've looked at multiple ways to find this. Okay, and so we're going to go to 550.32. All right, so let's do that. All right, so 550.32. Let's see what we got here. Service equipment. All right, so mobile home service equipment, and then of course that's A, and then of course B is manufactured home. That has nothing to do with the question. So the first thing that I noticed, and what you should do, is that the answers are 30, 25, 50, or 20. I can look at this really quickly and look for a foot reference to know that I'm in the right place. So example, if I'm looking at 550.32a and I'm just really doing it really kind of a quick scanning, I will notice that there's 30 feet referenced. And then I'm looking around that answer to see if I get other triggers in here, like shall be located in sight and not more than, those type of languages. So when I see that first 30 right above that, I see where it says the service equipment shall be located in sight from and not more than 30 feet from the exterior wall of the mobile home it serves. Okay, so that is my question. And that is almost verbatim what it says in the code. And then I go on from there. But when somebody ever asks me how we dissect a question, we dissect it just like we did. Now, the good news is you go through the program, you probably already knew this answer. And you could have answered it, move on. But when we're studying, we don't do that. As painful as it is, we look up all the little pieces. Why? Because it's my way of getting you to go through the code book without telling you to go through the code book. Okay, that's why I basically tell you to dissect it. I'm forcing you in the code book. So there you go. All right, next question. A metal underground water pipe is permitted to be used as a grounding electrode where the water pipe is in direct contact with the earth for at least blank or more. Okay, again, this is probably one you know right off the bat, but let's dissect it. So what are we talking about? We're talking about grounding electrodes, right? Just so happens this one is a metal underground water pipe. Now, if you're doing grounding electrodes, you might be savvy enough at this point to say, well, I got this. So the list of electrodes is in 250.52. But if you didn't, you could go to the index and say, well, let me look under electrodes or grounding electrodes. Let's look at that because I think you'll want to see how this actually works when it comes to some of these in the book. So this one I do want to do just for purposes of showing you. So let's go in the back and let's say, okay, well, let me look under, what would you think? What would be the logical thing that you'd go look under here? Y'all the ones taking the exam, so what do you think? Are you going to go looking under electrodes? Or are you going to look under grounding electrodes? What are you going to go look? Are you going to look under metal underground water pipe? What are you going to go? What's your first gut instinct, Darren, on what you're going to go to?
Yeah, grounding electrode.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's go in the back and look under grounding electrode. Okay, so I'm in the back. I got grounding. I got grounding conductors. I got grounding electrode conductors, and I got grounding electrodes. And guess what that tells me to go to? Electrodes. Okay. All right. So that's sending me to electrodes. All right. So I'm going to go to electrodes. That's where it sent me. And let's see here. Under electrodes, we've got metal water pipe system. Now, this is one of those things where it takes a little bit of of knowledge. And if you look at this, now check this out for me. Look in under electrodes, look at where it says metal water piping. Okay. So what you're going to see is there's a 250.30, 250.30, there's a 250.30, and you're looking at all those, excuse me, wrong one. It's metal water pipe. There's a 250.30 A4, there's a 250.30 A8, there's a 250.52 A1, and a 250.68 C. Now, you'll learn that the list of electrodes is in 250.52. You'll learn that the .30 is talking about it when you're dealing with separately derived systems. That's what .30 is dealing with. And of course, in 250.68 is talking about using the water pipe in certain areas of the water pipe to make a connection to an extension or whatnot. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, this is asking about the electrodes, right? So that's why I'm going to go to the .52 one. So I'm going to go to 250.52A1. Now you could have put the .30 down, you could put the 250 and you put the .30 down, you're going to go look and it wouldn't take you but a second to realize that this question here had nothing to do with the separately derived systems or anything like that. Okay. This is everything to do with asking about the electrodes. Now, so we got that written down is just go to 250.52A1. But real quick, is there anything in here about water pipe ground? Is there anything under W? Somebody out there had to probably go look that up. So I just want to see if there's anything, is it getting to that level? Hope not, but we'll see here. It might. So let's look.
Yeah, water pipe as grounding electrode.
Where are we at here?
250.52A1 and 53D.
So essentially the same location, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you have water pipe and it says as an electrode. So it sends you to the same one. So there you go. Cross-reference. Now it didn't actually say metal underground water pipe, but it did say water pipe and it says as grounding. So, you know, so that's another one, but at least it quantifies where we wanted to be. And that was in .52A1, which is your list of different grounding electrodes. So let's go on and go to 250.52A1. We feel pretty confident with that. So let's do that. Of course, again, if you knew this already, then you just answered it and move on. You didn't have to worry about it. So 250.52 is the electrodes. And the very first one, A1, is a water pipe, metal underground water pipe. So we can feel pretty confident that that's where we're at, because that's what the question's about. And then real quickly, again, I would say on an exam, it's all about your timing, and we can see that we have references here, and I can look real quickly and obviously see the 10-foot reference here. So just read the language around it to quantify it. And it says a metal underground water pipe in direct contact with the earth for 10 feet or more. And it says at least blank or more, 10 feet. Obviously, there is no other reference, anything else here. So 10 feet is the answer. You check it and you go. Okay. So when you get down to the last 2 weeks, you're not going to dissect it like this. You're going to go find your answer, and you're going to try to do it within your 2-minute period, right? To do that. But when you're dissecting, you're not going to do that. Okay. All right. Next question. What is the minimum number? Okay. Believe it or not, this would qualify as a calculation on most exams. So you can choose to answer it on the first wave or pass it. But let's work it out. So what is the minimum number of 20 amp? Let Michael in here. What is the minimum number of 20 ampere rated brand circuits required for a one-family dwelling? So it's just an interesting question. This is one of those ones that could go 2 different ways. Okay. But let's kind of work this one out, and we may get it right. We may get it wrong. I don't like the premise of the question, but let's look at it. So when it says a minimum number of 20 amp rated brand circuits required for a one family dwelling, so this is thinking of the rules that are required for the one family dwelling. Okay, well, just off the top of our head, we know what? How many small appliance brand circuits do we have to have?
2.
At least 2. It's a one family dwelling. So laundry, we got to have how many of those?
One.
One.
Bathroom.
Well, the bathroom gets included with the overall count, but how about this? How about this? Let's dissect it this way. I probably did this wrong for you. Where am I going to go in the code that tells me the number of branch circuits and how I even start that journey? Because
ballpark 210.
All right, so ballpark 210 would be in 210, but we're looking for the branch circuits. So just for craps and giggles, before we do it, go look up in the index under branch circuits and see if it says anything to do with like a number, minimum size number. See what it just says, because very rarely do you get to spend some time looking at branch circuits in the index. So this is a good opportunity to look at it and see all that might be covered under it. So, because it is fairly long, 2.5 columns worth. So if I look at branch circuits, we obviously quantify it's 210. And then we're looking down and we're going, okay. Let's see here. So under appliance, you see small, which is, that's kind of a funky way to do it, but that's small appliance branch circuits. So I would say, well, we know those are circuits, so that's 210.11 C1. And then I'm going down a little bit more. Well, there you remember somebody made a reference to the bathroom, so you made that reference. So that is 210.11 C3. So that's why I stopped us there, because I knew we were going to start getting our number and it would defeat the exercise. So we got that. So let's write that down, because that's a branch circuit. So that is 210.11 C. What was that? C3. Yep. All right. So we wrote that down. And let's go on down in any other ones that we see here that might stick out. As I'm just looking down and all right, so one of the things to remember is it might have said, it didn't say a garage here. So we're not worried about the one that's required for a garage. Okay, we're not worried about that. Okay, somebody said something earlier. One of the other ones that we looked at was the branch circuit for what? We said laundry, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so is laundry in here? Am I just missing it? Even though we know it, and we know we're going to get there when we go to 210.11, we know that's going to stick us in the face. But I'm interested, is that in here anywhere? That's interesting.
I don't see it in the index.
Under branch circuits.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And you know what else is probably interesting is I bet you the reason the index doesn't have a lot of the stuff that we would want in the index, and we're like, why can't we have this in index? I would think on code, public inputs and stuff, I am not sure, and I don't know the answer to this question, but I don't think that you can public input stuff for the index. I think that is cross-referenced from NFPA. They do that for us. That's interesting, because I know that Tom Henry does his own, and other people may do their own. You can't use them in exams in a lot. Some states you can, some can't, but it's not in here. So you just have to know, right, that the laundry requires it, right? So
look, just as a note, Paul, so laundry in the index does indicate outlets, dwelling, and then 210.11 C2.
Good. That's where I was getting ready to go to laundry and see it, if there was anything under laundry. Cool. So that gives us C2, right?
Yeah. And then it's also 50C and 52F.
Okay. And those have to do with other aspects of whether or not the outlet's required or not. If it's a multifamily and all that stuff. So that's not really our branch. So we feel pretty good that 210.11 is going to give us what we need, right?
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have the word laundry circuit under branch circuit, right? Make it easier for somebody. But yeah, those that go through the program probably, like you said, y'all already knew, because that was one of the first ones y'all blurted out was laundry. So that and bathroom and everything. So, all right. So let's go to 210.11. See if we can get our answer. Okay. So 210.11C. But before we even get there, let's look at 210.11 general. It's just a general rule, not C yet. And here's what it says. Branch circuit for lighting and appliances, including motor operated appliances, shall be provided to supply the load calculated in accordance with 220.10. In addition, branch circuits shall be provided for specific loads not covered by 220.10 where required elsewhere in this code, and for dwelling unit loads as specified in 210.11c. So that's where we get the reference to the number in a dwelling unit, and these are minimums. Now, one thing to remember, don't get lost in an exam. One thing that probably comes to everybody's mind, we're like, well, where does the 3 VA per square foot come into play? Well, it doesn't here. It's no values given, no dimensions given. Typically, that could be a 15 or a 20 amp circuit, depending. So that doesn't even come to the equation. We're only worried about 20 amp requirements. So if we look at the small appliance, C1, that's where we get at least 2, right? Could have more than 2. And by the way, if you do have more than 2, you have to count for those when you're doing your load calc, 1,500 VA each. But again, 2 here. We're going with the minimums. It says minimum. So we have 2. We have a laundry circuit, at least 1, so that's 3. We have a bathroom that says, in addition to the number of branch circuits required by other parts of this section, 1 or more 120 volt 28 branch circuits shall be provided for the bathroom. So that's 3. Now that doesn't add any VA to your calculation. The 3 VA already covers that, but you do have to have the branch circuit. And of course, if we had a garage, that would be 1, but we no mention to that here. So I'm interested. So on theory, the answer should be what? 4, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's see what they say.
Oh, 5.
What did I click? The wrong one?
No, you said 4,
Oh,
but
I'm
they're so they are accounting for a garage, but not
Okay.
like you said, not all houses, not all dwellings have a garage.
Yeah, and this question does not mention a garage. So again, that's why my sudden shock face. Look, and it's why I kept saying this about garages. This is not what's going to happen, hopefully, on your exam, because this is an example of a bad question. I am not going to assume a garage unless they tell me it's a garage, right? So to me, this is, and you're right, because this says C1 through 4, so this is assuming a garage. But again, if I don't have a garage, now some people say all one-family dwellings have a garage. I will tell you that's not true, because the first house I lived in didn't have a garage, and I built that house, and it was a single-family dwelling. I had a driveway. I had a car that got hailed on and got dents all in it, but I didn't have a garage. Okay, so not all homes have a garage. Split level homes, a lot of them, the smaller ones. My first home I ever built, I built it. It was 1,400 square foot. First one for my wife and me and my small son. Did not have a garage in it. So I'm not going to assume a garage. So this, to me, poor question, but it makes us have a discussion and talk about it. And you'll forever remember that now in this question. But the real answer to this question, based on the way it's written right here, should be 4. All right, next one. Givens. A one-family dwelling having a computed, okay, so somebody calculated it out. They did all the math. Computed demand load of 175 amperes, all right? And it is to be provided with a 12240 volt single phase 3-wire service drop from the utility. Okay. What is the minimum size aluminum conductors with THWN insulation permitted for use? Okay. So minimum size permitted for use as ungrounded phase service entrance conductors. 2-aught, 3-aught, 1-aught, 4-aught. What do you think? All right. So this is the one where you got to look at it. You really got to look at it here. And this one is exactly what you're thinking in your mind, where you're going to be, where you need to be. But work me through this. What are we going to do? All right, let me ask you the question this way then. Are we going to pull the ampacity specifically straight from 310.16, or are we going to use somewhere else in 310? How about that? Let me ask it that way.
I was thinking of using that 83% rule if the whole load's on
Okay. Well, let's look at the question. It's a one-family dwelling. That allowance, do you know what, so let me test you. What article, what section is that rule for the 83%?
Gonna be in 310.12a.
Okay, absolutely, because we are talking service here. So it is 310.12. For those in the 2017 code, it's 310.15b7, by the way. All right. So we're looking for a minimum size for this application. Right? All right. So if we were doing that, let's take our code books. So let's go to 310.12. And let's see what it says here. Let's see if we, first of all, we got to see if it qualifies. All right. So 310.12 is, you know what, before we even do this, if this was 175 amp service and you were to go to 310.16, what would you choose? Based on the information you're given, what would you choose? What would be your size?
2R.
Okay, well, this has got to be aluminum.
4
Right?
Oh, aluminum, that's right.
That's right. So, we're not doing any other little tables right now. We're just looking at what it says here. So for 175, it would be 4/0, right? Because that's good for 180 under the 75 degree, which is the THHN, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it would be a 4/0 if we just went to that application and took it straight from the table. Okay, all right. So now let's go back to 310.12 and let's see if those rules apply here. So we're looking at it, and people ask me, when can you apply this? On an exam, you can apply it anytime the parameters fall within it, because that's going to result in the minimum size. You can always go larger, but we get to use it if it falls in the parameters of code rules. So is this a single family dwelling? Yes. Is the service, so we're going to deal with this one. Is it single phase 12240? Yes. For our application, yes, it's fine. And since we're dealing with the service, we're going to be in A. Right? Now, if you're, again, in 2017, it's 310.15b7, and it might be b7.1, I believe, or something like that. All right, so let's look at it. So the criteria is, for service, it has to be rated 100 amperes through 400 amperes. Well, this is fine. It's just 175, so it falls in it. And it has to supply the entire load. Well, nobody told me anything other than this. Nothing says any differently here that it doesn't do that, so we're good. Okay, and so it tells me that it shall be permitted to have an ampacity not less than 83% of the service rating. Well, what is the service rating? Well, the service rating is the 175. All right, so let's do this. 175 times 0.83 is 145.25. So I have to have a conductor that is at least that ampacity. Okay. All right. So, well, the one thing that we have today is that we could go right down to the table 310.12 and not have to use the 83%. That's why I suck that they put the table back in, because I liked people to have to use the 83%. But you can use this table. So this is just a little tip for you. You can use this table 310.12 in your 2020 NEC as long as there's no adjustment or corrections. Then you have to do no calculation, right? So for example, in this case, if I was at the 175, you see that it would be a 1/0 copper or 3/0 aluminum. I don't have to do anything. However, if there was an adjustment or corrections that were to take place, then forget this table exists and do the math just like you would if you're doing like we do in the derating demystified video. Okay, you have to apply it and do all the rules there, and you can use the values at the 90 degree. As long as after adjustment and correction, you still have a conductor that is at least 83%. Okay, the 83% doesn't go away. Okay, you still use the 83%. Yeah.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So the 83% we only use it for one family dwellings, and that's it?
Now, so if you look at it, it'll tell you for single phase dwelling services feeder, it says, if you're looking at 310.12, it says for one family dwellings and the individual dwelling units of a 2-family and multifamily dwelling. So this will apply to individual dwelling units. Now, it might not apply to the service to a building that has multifamilies in it, but it would apply to the individuals that go out to the dwelling unit. You can apply it. So you might be able to apply this rule to the individual dwelling unit, but you wouldn't apply it to the entire service under this rule, okay? Or you would apply it to single family dwellings like we're doing here, or the two individual dwelling units of a two family dwelling. So no, it is not just for like a one family dwelling. As long as you meet this criteria, it could be for different applications, okay? So let's say I had a multifamily building with 12 units. Now, I could not use this rule, 83%, for the part that comes to the service. But you see that we have a feeder allowance here that would allow me to go out to the individual dwelling units, and I would be able to use the 83% on those, provided that that panel in that load handles 100% of the load, okay? So you do have different options here that you can use it for, okay? All right, so in this case, if we didn't look at this table down here, then we have to find a conductor that's at least 145.25 amps, right? So down here, it says 1-aught copper, 3-aught aluminum. If I come over here to 31016 and look at the 145.25, you'll see that on the copper side, it would be 1-aught because you would have to be the 150 because it's over the 130. And then under the aluminum side, same kind of concept. Under the 75, you'll see that the 2-aught is good for 135, but the 3-aught is good for 155. We have to have a conductor that's at least 145.25 amps. So that's why this table right here, 310.12, was derived from the 83% rule. But just remember that underneath it, you see that note? You can only use this if no adjustment or corrections are going to apply. And in this question, there was nothing said about any adjustment and corrections, so you are free to use this table, okay? If you're in the 2017 code, you're gonna have to do the 83%, and that's what we did. So I had to search for a conductor that was not less than 145.25 amps, which is 83% of this 175, okay? So in answering our question, since we can use this table, and it's asking for what type of conductor it wants it aluminum, right? So it would be 3-aught, right?
Yep.
And there we go. And here you can see the math for the NEC in the 2017, because again, you could just go to the table in the 2020. It's used to actually be an informative Annex D, example D7, and it is still there. And it does give you an example when you might have an adjustment or correction that takes place. So you want to go look at that. The Annex D is a great place to go to see, well, how would I apply to it? And you know what? You're probably not going to have more than 3 current carrying conductors. That's never going to be probably an issue here. But what you may have is a situation where you have an ambient, and you might have to deal with an ambient. So that would require you to do something, but most people don't do it, to be honest with you. They don't even, and inspectors won't even expect it to be done at service anyway. But here you see the 175 times 83%, that's the 145.25. That's how we came up with that. And that's when we would go to the table, and that's where we would have to choose that conductor because we have to have one that at least is good for 145.25 amps, okay? Now, even when you do have to do adjustment and corrections, at the end of the day, I still need a conductor that is not less than 83%. So you're still using the 83%, even if you have an adjustment or correction. Okay, so again, go look at the informative Annex D, example D7, and it will become crystal clear. Also, at the end of my D rating demystified video, I do an example of this at the end. Okay, now, one last thing on this one, don't get thrown on an exam. If you get a question where you have a breaker outside, a panel outside, and maybe there's an air conditioning out there and it has breakers in it, and it pops out of that and feeds the air conditioning, and then it goes from there with the feeder to the main panel inside, guess what? Then you can't use this rule because they're not handling 100% of the load, okay? So it wouldn't work from your panel. You wouldn't be able to use it on your feeder that's going to your panel inside. You just wouldn't be able to use it for that. All right, next question is when a device box is installed in a wall having a gypsum drywall surface, which is a non-combustible surface, says those surfaces that are broken or incomplete around the box employing a flush type faceplate shall be repaired so that there's no gaps or open spaces greater than blank at the edges of the box. So when it comes to a box in a wall, we have two different dimensions. We have how far back it can set back in the wall, and if it's non-combustible, it's like gypsum board, then it can sit back as much as 1/4 of an inch. All right. If it is a combustible wall, it's got to be flush. So you got to be careful on how you put your box. And if it is back, then you're going to have to use an extender inside of it, one of those plastic ones or whatever, to basically extend it out. But what about the gaps that are around it? So this is where you have people the sheetrockers that'll cut the box and they cut it too big around it. And, they're done. You know how the sheetrockers go. No disrespect to sheetrocker, but once they do it, they're gone. They're out of there. You're the poor electrician now is stuck with, okay, what if the inspector gigs me for this big gap around the box? All right. What is the value around the box? Now, again, on an exam, you probably know this and you can answer it and you probably moved on, right? Obviously, there's a couple that you can rule out. 1/2 inch ain't working, okay? So where do we go to find the answer to this in the code?
314.
All right, we're talking about boxes. So you're at 314. So where are you at in 314?
Dot 20.
Dot 20?
Yes.
Okay, so go to 314. Now tell me, did you just know that? Or where did you look?
Well, I know 314 is for box fill, so I just went and do a scan and I found it
Okay.
right there.
Did bold scanning.
Yes.
Okay. So when you look at 314 and you look at dot 20, that does say, the question in here said flush type. So this says flush mount installation. And this is a lot of information in there. Basically, y'all know how I am. I want to look back and see if there's anything in boxes for those people. You got to remember, everybody's at a different level. So some people, it might not have been intuitive for them to go there, or they might not have learned the scanning techniques and how to look at things quickly and be able to kind of pick out key pieces. So let's just look at boxes real quick and to see if there's anything to do. It says anything about gaps around boxes or anything like that. So let's see. I'm at boxes and I'm looking at it and I want to see if it's anything about, let's see, the depth, the drop, the fill. All right, I see a flush mount installation. So this is talking about a flush type. We're talking about a box, and it's a flush mount. So I see flush mount installations 314.19. It's certainly worthy of me jotting down, right? Just to jot it down, 314.19. It might put me in a better area to start my search. And let's see if there's anything else in here that might be relevant to us. Let's see here. All right, well, here I see something that's repair of non-combustible surfaces. All right, well, I have to know that gypsum board is a non-combustible surface. And the whole thing is talking about where those surfaces are broken or incomplete. So one key thing that if I'm preparing for an exam, I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, well, dude, I wrote down dot 19. And this one is dot 21. So I'm going to write dot 21 under it. They are right near next to each other. Okay, so it's not like a big struggle for me to go and look something. And then I'm looking down and see if there's anything else that would be beneficial there. And I really don't see anything in there that would be beneficial. And I don't know any other term, anything else in here that I could go look up for those two things. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to go to 314.19 first, because that's the earlier number. And I'm looking at it. And one of the things I'm looking is my answers are giving me a value, 1/2 inch, 1/8 inch, 3/8 inch, 1/4 inch. Well, I can look at 19 right away and realize, and again, for an exam, none of those references are in there. So I'm immediately going to jump and say, okay, well, bold scanning. Well, I look at 314.21 and really quickly I look at it and go, okay, all right. Well, the flush mount one is basically talking about what I just said earlier. That is an extension back to the flush, right? But the repair of non-combustible surfaces is more accurate in dot 21. So let's read that one. It says non-combustible surfaces that are broken or incomplete around boxes. Okay, so if you saw that and you already read that in the question, then your ding, 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 ding's going off. Then you're really quickly, you're looking and you notice at the top of the page, it's 1/8 of an inch. So the answer was not 314.20. That is about the depth of it in the box, having to bring it up flush. are questions about the damaged surfaces around it. So in this example, it would be 1/8 of an inch. So that's why it would be 314.21. So we could have gotten there quickly. We could have gone right to that 314.20 and we could have looked at it and make sure that we didn't accidentally pick 1/4 of an inch. Okay, because that's talking about flush to the how deep it is in the box, and we kind of talked about that. Here we're looking for any damage or anything that would be around it. And again, you have to also know that it says gypsum board drywall, that is non-combustible. Wood is combustible. Tile, plaster, things like that, those are non-combustibles. Okay, so we could have made this question easier instead of calling it gypsum drywall surfaces. If we had to put on there non-combustible surfaces, then you would have probably gone to it right away and wouldn't have to worry about it. All right, next question. One family dwelling with direct outdoor grade level access in the front and back. Okay, so I've got my dwelling, one family dwelling. I'm going right out the front, I go right out the back. The entrance and egress in the front and the back are at ground level, okay, grade level, right? Are required to have blank. One receptacle outlet at the back, one receptacle outlet at the front. So I either both, one in back, one in the front, one in the back only, one in the front only, or neither. I don't have to have any receptacle outlets on my house outside at all. And why do I want them? Because I know that my neighbor will run a long extension cord over when I'm not home, plug it into my receptacle, and steal my power. Okay, so I don't want them. So what's the answer? Both, one only, two, or neither. So, and where is it in the code? All right, so the first part that I look at this is that I know that this has dealing with receptacle outlet locations, and it's telling me where I have to have them. So where do I go when I know that it's all about the outlets, where they need to be, how spacing they are, whether I've got to have one? What part of the code would I go for that?
210.
210. So it's dealing with branch circuits, but these are the receptacle outlets that are supplied by those branch circuits. But we're familiar. Now, where in 210 is what I call the residential's holy grail, is the location where it's going to tell me the 6 and 12, the 2 and 4 foot rules for countertops. All of these have to do with receptacle outlets. Where is that in 210?
210.52.
There you go. So we're going to go immediately as you start to work the program. You'll realize that and you'll go, okay, boom. I'm going to where receptacle outlets and dealing with all these spacings. So I'm going to go to 210.52. Now, once I'm there, I know that I'm dealing very specifically with the requirements for a receptacle outlet, either in the front or back or both, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go look and I'm going to bold scan. And if you get familiar with it, you realize that A is dealing with the spacing, B is dealing with small appliances, C is dealing with the countertop surfaces, islands, whatever. D is the bathroom receptacle requirement. E is that new one for outdoor outlets, which may or may not disappear in the 2023 code. We'll see. Well, not disappear, but
E1.
some of the stuff may disappear when it comes to GFCI requirements for those outdoor ones. And then, of course, we're looking at E. And I shouldn't have said that. It's the outdoor outlet that's required to be GFCI protected by 210.8 may go away for those outdoor outlets. We'll see what happens. I gotta go back and read what happens to that, because again, Texas did a bold thing. They took it and made you not put it on GFCI because the little mini splits kept kicking them off. But I say it's the mini splits fault. That's their problem. They should fix their issue, and GFCI needs to be on those. Anyway, here we are at. So what are we dealing with? One family dwelling. So we're at outdoor outlets. That's what this question's asking. We're definitely a one family. So what does it say? It says for a one family dwelling and each unit of a two family dwelling that is at grade level, that question's grade level question, says at least one receptacle outlet readily accessible from grade and not more than 6.5 feet above grade level. Now I could have a receptacle higher than 6.5 feet, but it would meet this rule. Okay, that's in addition to the rule. So you got to have one not more than 6.5 feet above grade level, shall be installed at the front and the back of the dwelling. So it's required to be at both front and back.
Hey, Paul, so what's the minimum?
Well, the minimum is front and back. You have to have one at least the front and one in the back. If it's grade level access.
I'm sorry, I missed. What's the minimum like to put the height of the?
There is no minimum when it comes to down low, but there is a minimum when it comes up high. In other words, you can't. In order to meet this rule, it can't be higher than 6.5 feet. So typically we're going to put them, you'll come up with your standard. Again, for all of mine, when I put my receptacles inside, I put everything I did at about 16 inches. When I put receptacles outside, I pretty much stayed at about the 16 inches, give or take. But if I was going to change and make all of them outside 18, then I was consistent on the outside of the building. Okay. But there's nothing that says it can't be down 2 inches. But it just can't be higher than 6.5 feet and still meet this rule, right?
So Paul, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about having a split level home.
Yeah, I used to have
and,
one.
And those homes sometimes have multiple stairs to get to the entrance door because of the split level and how it was built.
Right.
So how is that measurement? Is it from the top of the stairs?
Well, here's the thing about that. It says accessible from grade. So literally the receptacle outlet has to be the point where you can actually be standing on grade level and reach it. Right? So if it's up through stairs or whatever, it's not reachable at grade level, then that would be, that would be a problem. The rule states that one family dwelling and each unit of a 2-family dwelling that is at grade level. So we have to assume it's at grade level to do that. It says at least one receptacle outlet readily accessible from grade, means you have to be able to get to it from grade, and not more than 6.5 feet above grade shall be installed at the front and back of the dwelling. If the dwelling unit is not, if the exit or the entrance or whatever is not at grade level, then this rule wouldn't apply. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Now there is jurisdictions that will argue and say that the extension of the steps brings it to grade level. But I'm going to be honest with you. If you have steps on it and the patio or whatever is not at grade level and you can't reach that receptacle outlet and that entrance is elevated and it's not at grade level, then I don't see where this rule would be required to do this. Now, my split level was different. And of course, I did have stairs, but you could actually reach it was at grade level. The way the patio was poured and everything was concrete. It was basically at grade level, but it's due to the elevation. And I had a receptacle there in the front. I wired my house, but I had one there. But literally, as the rule reads, it says for 1-family dwellings that is at grade level. So if it's not at grade level, then it's not going to be applicable. Personally, put a receptacle front and back on all occasions, but we're talking for an exam. But they're going to use it, whether they put lights, Christmas tree lights, or Christmas front porch lights, or whatever, that type of thing. The other thing to remember, though, if it's up higher and it ends up being a porch or like a patio, then you get into this issue of 3 where it says balconies, decks, and porches, and it says balconies, decks, and porches. So if it's not at grade level, but it's up on a porch, which can happen for those split levels, now the requirement to have that receptacle would kick in with E3. So you're going to end up having a receptacle there, okay, one way or another. All right. Now, the difference with E3 is that has nothing to do with front and back. That's just per porch or patio or deck that this rule kicks in. So one of the ways they're going to get you one way or another to have a receptacle there. For a 1-family dwelling, at least one 125 volt, 15 or 20 amp receptacle outlet shall be installed in each detached garage or storage building if the garage or storage building is A, provided with electric power, B, more than 750 square feet in size, C, less than 20 feet from the dwelling, and D, more than 20 feet from the dwelling. Well, this is a good example of if you're on an exam, you roll right through this one, right? Because you should know the answer to this, whether or not you have it or not, right? But where do we want to look in the code since we're here? Where do we look at the code real quick for this receptacle outlet requirement? You're right there where we were before. You just like flip a page and you'd be right there. All right. When we're talking about, so in this case here, we're talking about what? A detached garage, right? So what's the requirements for that? What do we say? What do you think? What's the rule? Have electric power, or does any of these dimensional things or distance, 20 feet, are these going to play any role? Which you think is the answer, and where would you find it?
Well, reading on
Provided with electric power.
Okay, and where would we see that at?
So 210.52 G1.
Okay, G1's is for the garage, and of course, you know,
2
storage
is
building.
accessory.
Yeah. So what does it say here? It says garages says in each attached garage and in each detached garage with electric power, at least one. So if the detached garage doesn't have electric power, I get people ask that all the time, and I'm sitting there thinking, why would I put in a receptacle outlet if I ain't got power in there? So that's a no-brainer. So it has to have power there to evoke to have the receptacle outlet there. Okay, so it has to have power. So in this one, this would have been one. It's just a process of elimination. Again, obviously you can't have a receptacle unless you got power there. So nothing forces me to have to take power to a detached garage. That's a choice that I make. And if I want to run power to it, if I run power to it, then I have to have at least one 125 volt, 15 or 20 amp receptacle outlet there. And that may be a simple branch circuit, or I may choose to take a feeder to it and put a panel in there, and I'm going to do other loads, but that would be requiring me to have power to that detached garage. Okay. Let's see if we're right here. There you go, G1. All right, where type UF cable is used as a substitute wiring method for type NM cable for the interior wiring in a house. Maybe they want to use it for an application where they can't use NM. Maybe they want to put it in a slab going from over to an island or something. All right, well, or maybe I just want to use NM as a substitute interior. Maybe I'm coming into the building from maybe a cable that's going out to a post light, and now it's going to come up and into the wall, and it's going to be running up into the wall, and it's going to be utilized. Or maybe like in this question, I'm just, I'm a glutton for punishment. If you've never stripped out UF cable versus NM, if you're a glutton for punishment and you want to install UF cable as a substitute, can you? And it says the conductor insulation is required to be rated at blank, 75, 90, 100 degree F, or 60 degrees Celsius. Where do you find this information? So what article? So we know what article here. We'll just do some learning stuff. What article deals with NM cable again?
334.
Absolutely. What article deals with UF cable?
340.
340. Okay. So the question is asking me about UF cable. So this is one where you could use the index, or this is an example where it's nice to create those flashcards and so that you learn the different articles for the different wiring types, right? So, tray cable, and you're dealing with 336, SE cables, 338. You start learning the different ones, and then it just makes it a little easier. So if we go to Article 340 and we look at it and we go down and we say, okay, What values do we need here to do? We're gonna let's see if we can find it in here inside of here. So we want to see if we first of all we want to see if we can use it, right? Okay.
So
So
340.10, and it's bullet point 4.
okay. It says installed as non-metallic sheath cable. Where so installed, the installation and conductor requirements shall comply with Part 2 and Part 3 of Article 334 and shall be of the multi-conductor type.
What
Okay.
about 340.112?
340.112 insulation?
Yes, at the end.
Okay, let's look at that. 340.12. Okay, so first of all, to answer kind of the questions first, I think what he was doing is answering the question that I asked. So first question is, what gives me permission to use to use UF as a substitute? Well, you're absolutely right. 340.10, item 4, that gave me the permission. Check, we're good there. I'm okay to use it. Okay, in case anybody ever asks, absolutely you can. All right, now, when it comes to that, you jumped me over to 340.112 because it's talking about the insulation, and this question's asking about insulation. Good news is 340 is only what? Choose that thing ain't but one column, right? 1.5 columns. That's it. So it's not much here. Doesn't take you much to bolt scan. So you went to insulation, and it says the conductors of type UF shall be one of the moisture resistant type listed in table 310.4a. And if you didn't know, table 310.4a is a great table. It shows you all the temperature ratings, things that you might not know, where XHHW, for example, is rated for 90 degrees in a dry, but only 75 in a wet. So you have to put that -2 on it, and then it becomes 90 in a wet for adjustment and correction purposes. You know, you can find out all that stuff from that table. So it's a lot of info at that table. All right, now, and UF is listed there as well. It says that is suitable for branch circuit wiring or one that is identified for such use. It says we're installed as a substitute wiring method for NM cable. The conductor insulation shall have a rating of 90 degrees C. Okay. Now you might have gotten that right away because you know that if the NMB or NM cable requires an insulation to be 90 today, then it so stands to reason if I'm going to use UF as a substitute, I still have to maintain the same ratings of the inner conductor. So it would still have to be 90. So if you use that logic as far as the insulation ratings, then you could have answered that question really quickly. You can't substitute it and reduce the rating of something. If it's required to be 90 degree insulation for NMB, then if you're going to substitute it with UF, then guess what? That insulation on those conductors inside of it would have to be 90. So you could have gotten there that way, but I like how we dissected that down, and we'll go with the 90. And incidentally, most of the UF that you will buy will actually also have that -B on it, and that -B signifies that the insulation is rated for 90. Even though it says it right here, the manufacturers since 1984 have been putting that on their cable assembly. And there you go. Absolutely.
Yeah, here in Long Island, after Hurricane Sandy, we used on any first floors that had crawl spaces or first floors that were in flood zones, just for the sense of people not wanting to rip out and having to redo and replace all of the non-metallic sheath cable. We ended up running UF wire for all that areas.
That's a great example of anywhere that areas where they flooded or whatever, New Orleans, places like that. That's probably a great practice. Absolutely. Because I tell you, when a flood hits, the calls at my office start coming in. What do we do about the NMB that was submerged? Well, the only answer I got for you is it's got to come out. You got to rip it. Can't keep it. We don't know what's in that water. We don't know what it came in contact with, those type of things. So yeah, definitely.
And Ideal makes a fantastic stripper. It's specifically designed for UF. It kind of sandwiches. Yeah, it sandwiches the cable on either side, and basically it just shears and snaps the outer jacket without even coming close to touching the center conductors.
Awesome. There you go. I tell you what, because stripping UF can be one pain in the butt. Just saying. All right, anything that makes it easy, that's what I like. All right, next question. Non-metallic sheath cable question. Type NMs shall be permitted to be installed unsupported where the cable is blank. Number one, fished in existing walls or of finished buildings. Or two, not more than 4.5 feet from the last cable support to the connection point to a luminaire. Neither one nor two, either one or two only, or one only. Okay. Well, it shouldn't take you much here since this is talking about non-metallic sheath cable. We know that we're in Article 334. We also know that this is talking about securing and supporting aspects of it when you are allowed to do something unsupported. So it's very significant because we've either got secured and supported, and then we have unsupported. And so all we need to do is real quick, and you might know the answer, you can move on. But if not, you want to make sure that you really do know the answer and not just pick it, and then you end up being wrong, okay, from some little nuance in it. So let's go to 334, and we remember, Dot 30 is the securing and supporting in most of the Chapter 3 wiring methods. Dot 30 is where you're going to go for securing and supporting aspects of this. So you can immediately go to dot 30. So if you remember that, and since this question is asking about some type of support, or in this case, unsupported cable, that's where we'd go. So let's go to 334.30. All right, so at 334.30. Now, when we're looking at these, dot 30, we're saying, okay, I see securing, supporting. And all of a sudden, I also see down at B, it says unsupported cable. And that kind of supports what our question is there, right? So let's see here. It says, non-metallic sheet cable shall be permitted to be unsupported where the cable is one. Number one, it says, fish between access points through concealed spaces of finished buildings or structures and supporting is impracticable. And number two says, in not more than 4.5 feet from the last point of the cable support to the point of connection to the luminaire or other piece of electrical equipment, and the cable and point of connection are within an accessible ceiling in 1, 2, or multi-family dwellings. All right. So pretty generic with the question here. So this just says fish in existing walls and finished buildings. I kind of get that. It's just, it wasn't overly, a lot of information there, but fine. And then I do see the 4.5, and I do see the reference to 4.5. So what do you think? It would be what? Either, right?
Yeah.
Let's see what it says here. Either, there you go. Now they chose to give us very limited information here, but you can deduce from it when it talked about fished between access points and concealed spaces in finished buildings. Then this is saying fished in existing walls of finished buildings. Okay. A lot of people ask, can you fish NMB anyway, even in new construction? The answer to that is no. It has to be secured and supported. The allowance to fish it and unsupported it has to do with fishing it in finished buildings. So after it's got its CO, if you're coming back and you're adding something and fishing it down, then there's the chances are it's fishing in the wall. It doesn't have the risk of anybody driving nails through it or staples through it. So that's why it allows it, once the gypsum's up, once everything's up, it's finished, then you have the ability to fish in there, and the chances are it's not going to cause any potential damage to the cable assembly. And of course here, when it's talking about 4.5 feet from the last cable support, it didn't give you all these other details like inaccessible ceilings and all that. So again, only can answer what the question is given, and based on what's written here, we would go with the fact that it is 4.5 feet from the last point cable support to the connection to the luminaire. And then there's or, which deals with a whole separate piece of that. So we're only dealing with the part up to the or, and that's where this would be an application. So it would be either this one and this one would apply.
So Paul, just as a general question then, so like we were
Sure.
talking about the single gang Carlon boxes that are the nail-on boxes that don't have the clamps, but single gang Carlon old work boxes do have the securing method. So is that just because of the sense that you can snake it, fish it, and then you're kind of securing it to the box because you're not able to secure it to the building structure then at that point?
I can't answer that question, Darren, but that makes perfect sense. If it's an old work box, cut-in box, You're
Mhm.
right. Most of the ones that I see with those have that little pinch thing.
Right.
And so again, it would secure it to the box, and that makes sense to me. I don't know. I'd have to look at the listings for boxes and all, but that makes total sense if you're going to use, because that's typically what you would do, right? With those old cut-in
Yeah.
boxes. Okay.
Yep.
But that makes sense. So I never really thought about that, but yeah, makes sense. Do that. All right. All right. We're going to do the last one for tonight, unless y'all have any different questions, and I'll end the stream and we can go on to some questions that any other you might have. It says, what is the allowable ampacity? Now, interesting enough, this is a 2020 question, but I'm going to start off by saying that this term allowable doesn't appear in the code anymore. Okay. So again, I'm going to be a little leery of this question. Might be a carryover or something, but we'll see. It says the allowable ampacity of a size 14.3 AWG type SJO flexible cord when only 2 of the conductors are considered current carrying. Okay, so only 2 of the conductors are current carrying. It doesn't matter. It's a 14.3, so that maybe that comes into play somewhere. So only 2 of the conductors are current carrying. Okay, we'll see if that makes a difference. But we want to find what the ampacity is of it. We don't use the term allowable anymore. So what's the first thing that sticks in your mind? First thing that should stick in your mind that this is a flexible cord, right?
Right.
So we're not going to be under the normal wiring methods. We're going to be under for flexible cords. So if you didn't know what that was, or the article one, let's do this real quick. Let's go to the back of the index and let's look under flexible cords or cords just to see what reference and to see if it says something about ampacity. If you were just like stuck and you're like, all right, I don't know the article for cords. Okay. Hopefully you know, but if you go back in the back, you'll see cords. That's under C, and you'll see flexible. Flexible cords, under cords, you see flexible. It says article 400. But then it says 422, but you should know that that's appliances. So that's not really what the question's asking. So I'm not going to worry about the 422. Now, under flexible, you see it says ampacities. Table 400.5A1 through 400.5A3. So I'm looking for ampacities. This is a flexible cord, and it's telling me right here the ampacities. But for craps and giggles, is there anything under flexible cords, by the way? Because I want to rule that out so you never have to worry about that. You know to go to cords. Let's see what is under flexible, if there is anything under flexible cords.
Yeah, it's telling you to refer back to cords.
Okay, good. So now we've settled that. We can go straight to cords when we're dealing with the flexible cord question. All right, so we've locked that in our mind now. And it's telling me to go to 400.5A1. And since there's an A1 through A3, we know that we can just go there. We're going to be tight in that area. Okay, now obviously something in this question is going to have to do with, there's a reason they tell me there's only 2 conductors considered current carrying. All right, for some reason. So let's go to 400.5A1. All right, so I'm at 400.5A1, and it's telling me that, let's see here. Well, before we even go, because that's actually going to be, the way the tables are laid out, that's actually going to be after this 400.4, all these different types here. So, but if you read it, it's going to tell you there. So, if you look at 400.5A, it says ampacity tables. Table 400.5A1 provides the ampacities, and table 400.5A2 provides the ampacities for flexible cords and flexible cables with not more than 3 current carrying conductors. Okay, well, this is telling us there's only 2. Okay, so again, we'll see how that goes. All right, so anything else in there? We know where we got to go. And it's telling us at the very bottom of that, just if you kind of read down, it says where the number of current carrying conductors exceeds 3, the ampacity of each conductor shall be reduced from the 3 conductor rating as shown in table 300.5A3. Okay, well, again, we know how many current carrying conductors in there, and it's not more than 3, so we're told that it's 2. Okay, so we're going to go to the table 400.5A1. Okay. So now we're looking at the type, all right? So let's see here. Now here's a couple things. Look at all the number that's in here, all the different types that are in here. We want to look under this, and we can tell this is SJO. So SJO is a thermoset, which is different than a thermoplastic. Thermoset is doesn't melt. It crystallizes at a certain temperature, where thermoplastic will actually melt. So this is a thermoset SJO. And you look at the top of the list in 400.5A1, you'll see there's SJO. So now, these are your ampacities in column A1, column B2. What do those little numbers mean? Well, those numbers fall under the table. And here's what it says. So the 1 stands for the currents under column A apply to 3 conductor cord and other multi-conductor cords connected to utilization equipment so that only 3 conductors are current carrying. Okay, so that's 1. And then number 2 says the current under column B applies to 2 conductor cords and other multi-conductor cords connected to utilization equipment so that only 2 conductors are carrying current. So that's why we had that statement in the question. So if I'm going up here, it looks to me like I want to be under column B2. So for this size of 14.3, it looks like, now this is where you need a freaking ruler, buddy. So you can make sure you don't screw it up. All right. So what do we got here? What do we think it is?
18.
18 amps. Okay, so we're at 18 amps. See what we got here. There you go. And that's why we're under column B. And that was the significance of that. So if you didn't read that and you went by what the language was, remember we said, oh, it's not more than 3 current carrying conductors, blah, blah, blah. Oh, then we just stay in A1 and we just go. There was a significance to understanding why the question said that there's only 2 conductors that are current carrying. Okay, so that's why we had to understand what these notes are all about in order to be able to answer that question. Okay. All right, we're going to get back to me. And what I'm going to do real quick, guys, is everybody that's over in the stream, I appreciate you joining us here for another example of exam prep and how we dissect questions. If you're interested in the Fast Tracks program, get involved in it. Again, you got access to it for an entire year. Do it at your own pace. But you get to join us on Wednesday nights if you choose to get into the program. Otherwise, again, learn to dissect a question. Take your time. If you can find yourself 25 to 50 questions, don't have a problem taking 10 minutes a question during your study phase. Don't worry about timing until the last 2 weeks before you do your exam, and then you're going to get better. Okay, so that's how we do it. That's how we teach you to methodically go through the index and look at all the possible answers and things like that. Basically, it's my way of getting you to spend more time in the NEC without telling you to spend more time in the NEC. All right, so everybody on the stream, thanks for watching, and I'm going to get to my fast track.